The city of Philadelphia wants to make it easier for bad tenants to rent apartments by making it illegal for landlords to see the eviction records that are on file. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's going over this whole push in Philadelphia to make it so landlords can't see eviction records. I've covered several stories similar to this about other cities, other municipalities in different parts of the country where they think that, hey, landlords, we don't need to be able to see eviction records because that's not fair to these poor tenants, okay? These awful tenants who don't pay their rent on time, who violate lease terms. We don't want it to make it hard for them to be able to rent a place. We think landlords should be forced to rent to them. That's essentially what they're telling us when they tell us that we can't see the eviction records. They think that these tenants and their misbehavior is more important than us, operating a business that actually, is able to pay its bills and, make money like it was supposed to. So my big issue, right, they always come at it from the angle that, the eviction was filed, but it was never completed. So, yeah, but here's my problem. Evictions are filed all the time that are not, gone all the way through the court process, because sometimes the tenants agree to leave. Sometimes the tenant and the landlord are able to work it out, but that doesn't change the fact that the eviction was filed because most likely the person didn't pay their rent on time or they didn't pay it at all. Okay. And that is a very important piece of information for the next landlord or the next property manager who is looking at this tenant. Okay, if you want a easy way to weed out a bunch of bad tenants, you just look at their eviction histories. That is an easy way. You're like, oh, well, wow, you have evictions filed on your record. Or, it seems like you didn't pay your last landlord on time, or it looks like you didn't pay your last landlord at all, or looks like you owe your last landlord thousands of dollars. Maybe I shouldn't rent to you. Okay, that's what we see. Okay, and I don't care if it's harder for them to find a place. That is why you have to pay your bills on time. That is why you have to follow the terms of the lease that you agreed to when you moved into the place. And if you're not willing to do that, then you have to face the consequences, period. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button. Maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. So do you have any sympathy for tenants who have evictions filed on their record? Evictions that might not have gone completely through the court process, right? But now they have a harder time finding housing due to it. I don't. Okay, I believe that they caused the problem, and landlords they're only doing what is in their own best interest. We are not out here to make sure that it is easier for tenants, bad tenants to find housing. That is not our job. That is not our responsibility. If the government wants to help these people find housing, or provide these people housing, so be it. But do not depend on a private business owner to make sure these people are housed, because that's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. We are not your social welfare provider. We are not your homeless shelter. So anyway, let's get into this article. This article is coming from the Philadelphia Inquirer, and it says, tenant advocates and Pennsylvania lawmakers want to seal eviction records, which can be barriers to future housing. Past attempts to seal eviction records have gone nowhere, but tenant advocates think now is the time. About 189,000 Pennsylvania households are behind on rent, says a report by CLS and PolicyLink. Yeah, that's a lot of people, but it's inevitable. Okay, there's always going to be people who are not paying their rent on time. Some of them will be able to, get back into good standing with their landlords, pay the debt that's owed, and maintain their housing. That doesn't mean just because 189,000 people are behind on rent doesn't mean they're all being evicted. It just means that, hey, there's a lot of people behind on rent right now. But anyway, let's get into this article. By far, the most common question that attorney Holly Beck hears from the Philadelphia renters she represents in eviction cases is whether the outcome will go on their record. She has to tell them that an eviction filing tied to their name will follow them and likely will make finding another home, especially one that is safe and affordable, more difficult. Whether you lose or you walk out of court with your landlord hand in hand. And that's hard news for people to hear, said Beck, divisional supervising attorney in the housing unit of the legal aid nonprofit, Community Legal Services of Philadelphia. Yeah, well, it's just like seeing somebody's criminal charges on their record, whether they actually were convicted of those charges or not, right? That can be a red flag for some landlords. That's why I believe also landlords should have full access to background investigations. I want to see the charges that were filed against you. If you, for example, have multiple charges of theft or fraud or receiving stolen property, do I really want somebody like that living up in my unit? I mean, multiple, because, working in law enforcement, I see the way that things work now. Okay. I see things a little bit differently. I see that a lot of the initial charges, they get pled down by district attorneys who are just looking for a conviction. And I see that a lot of cases, they get dismissed, even though the person is guilty of committing those crimes. So I at least want to be able to have all of the information possible on my potential tenants that says, hey, this person is or is not a good prospect. And if let's say I run your criminal history, I run your eviction history, I run your credit report, and I see red flags in there. Well, keep in mind that you're not the only applicant who is looking at my place. I might have 20 plus applicants looking at just one of my units. And most likely there's going to be a lot of those other 20 that have nothing, no bad credit history, no criminal arrests or convictions, and no eviction history whatsoever. So why in the world would I want to choose you? Why in the world? I'm taking a risk with hundreds of thousands of dollars, because I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on each property that I bought, right? So I'm taking a risk with my huge sum of money so that I could take a person in who I don't even know is going to pay me rent on time. No, it's not going to happen. And my suggestion to any landlord, right? Obviously everyone runs their business differently. Small landlords in particular are much more forgiving than big landlords when it comes to this sort of thing. And local laws and rules and regulations, they dictate how and what we can look at when we're doing our background screenings, right? But my suggestion is to take the best tenant possible and don't waste your time with anyone who has a filing even on their record. Tenant advocates and Pennsylvania lawmakers are attempting to shield the state's renters from the effects of having an eviction on their records. State Representative Ishmael Smith Wade L. said he plans to introduce legislation in the coming months that would limit access to eviction court records, addressing an issue he called both bad and easy to fix. He said he met a Pennsylvania woman a couple of years ago who applied for and was rejected at more than 30 apartments. The landlords who gave a reason pointed to an eviction on her record from 4 years before, when she had escaped an abusive boyfriend. Listen, okay, here's my issue. Yeah, she escaped an abusive boyfriend, right? But the eviction is on her record. The eviction is still on her record. And yeah, you're going to have a lot of rejections because of that. So the best thing that you could do at this point in time is, yeah, you're going to have to do a lot more in order to prove that, yeah, this isn't a continuing problem, okay? And you'll most likely will have to deal with smaller landlords who are more lax with their tenant screening protocols, or you might have to live in a worse part of town because of that. But I'm not taking that risk, okay? You actually have an eviction on your record. And my question is, right, if you had gone up to your landlord after you had that abusive boyfriend, right, and just told them, hey, my boyfriend is, beating me up and I need to get out of this lease, almost every landlord I know would have worked with you, okay? They would have worked with you. They would have been like, okay, that's a good reason to break the lease. We'll get your name off of there. But, most likely you didn't work with the landlord. You probably didn't go to court. Imagine if you had gone up to the judge and told them that. But to me, it's a lie. It's a story, unless there are, there's written documentation of it. So unless you went up to the judge and told them that, then you're just trying to make an excuse for why you got evicted for this newspaper article at this point. Okay, so yeah, I just don't believe it right now, and I just feel like you're just trying to garner sympathy to get this silly law passed that will end up hurting a lot of landlords. And believe me, this would hurt tenants too. This would not just hurt landlords, because what this will end up with is you'll have more tenants in properties who aren't paying their rent on time, right? And because of that, landlords will have to subsidize them with higher rents for the tenants who are paying their rent on time. Okay, this is one of the consequences that they don't talk about a lot. Basically, the more problems that we have, the higher our costs are going to be, and the higher rents we have to charge. So yeah, you're making things worse by passing this sort of law. So anyway, I'll put a link to the article down in the description below, and let me know what you think in the comments, about this whole situation. This sort of thing seems to be passing throughout the entire country.